Today is August 20th. This is episode 131, and the time is approximately 12:13 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So without any further ado, let's jump into today's mini episode. The first thing I wanted to do in particular, Donovan isn't here, but I do have something of a let me ask you this question that I'm going to pose to you, the audience out there who's listening or watching. And Donovan, when you're feeling better, you can pick up on this yourself. But I wanted to ask, considering everything that's going on these days and some of the themes that we talk about here on the show, and particularly for lack of a better term, the ideologies that we have essentially prescribed ourselves to, the morals and the ethics that we've been diving into and discovering for ourselves. When you find yourself agreeing or aligning with a set of values and morals and ethics that may not necessarily align to the societal structure, the governmental structure that we currently find ourselves in our everyday reality, how is it that you balance your ideological morals and ethics with the current reality that we find ourselves in? And so for me, I like to think of myself as an anarchist. I don't believe that the de facto authority of the state, which you had zero, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, it's always right on the tip of my tongue. You didn't agree to it at all. It's not the word I'm looking for, but we're going to go with it. I didn't agree to this. I didn't consent. There it is. I did not consent to this structure at all, the structure of authority that is imposed over me, and thus I believe that it does not have the right to dictate my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It is not okay in my book. There is zero de facto authority that I have essentially signed on to. And so that's like the boilerplate level of why I find myself as an anarchist. I don't believe that anybody should have some kind of de facto authority to just clamp down on your rights and how you live and so on and so forth. But I am confronted with the reality of the situation that we all find ourselves living in. We don't live in an anarchist society, and I don't think that realistically, I don't think we ever will, at least not in my lifetime. So how is it that I balance my morals and ethics taken from my research and my readings and investigations into anarchism? How do I balance that with this crazy giant governmental system that we find ourselves in today? And for me, I guess the easiest way for me to look at it is when I truly boil it down, the individual rights aspect of things is the most important. Your individual liberties and freedom is the most important thing. In this country, we have a pretty decent set of moral guidelines laid out in the Bill of Rights that I think is a pretty good guidepost that, as somebody that prescribes himself as an anarchist, I could easily kind of flex myself to get to that place where that it's okay for me to have some form of a federal government if we were to prescribe to only those aspects laid out in the Constitution. Or if I really, really wanted to get into it, I'd say let's nix the Constitution. Let's just focus more on the Articles of Confederation. But I also understand that that's not even a reality anymore either. The federal government has grown to a size that is untenable, obviously, as we'll later discuss, I think, mostly in part 2 today. But if I was to move forward and continue to exist and participate in the system of representative democracy that we have in America, using our system in place of voting for representation, if I could appeal to or look for representatives that truly embody the values centered around my own values based in anarchism, with the exception of the state has to exist, then that would be something that I think I could use on balance to justify my existence and participation in this insane system that we have today. Let me see. Bilbo, I believe all people should be able to dictate their self. We should be responsible enough for that. Government only needs to take care of infrastructure, military, and foreign affairs. That's about my tilt right there, Bilbo. There's a lot of hard questions, and if you guys are subscribers to our Patreon, I know I'm not a huge fan of Patreon, but hey, you got to have some kind of system to work within, right? Like we just talked about. We put out a monthly newsletter, and I am working on an ongoing series now, kind of describing some of my takes on anarchism and looking at some of the stereotypes and falsehoods that are painted around that. And in one of the pieces upcoming, there will be discussion on some of what I call the hard issues in anarchy, and that is definitely one of them. I could get around infrastructure pretty easily. I don't think that needs to be involved at a governmental level. But when it comes to especially things like military and foreign affairs, those are really hard questions to tackle when it comes to my own anarchist views and my values. There are prescribed ways or proposed ways that may get around that kind of system, but it's really easy at that point to start devolving away from that ultra decentralized individual right and consenting authority. At that point, it gets really difficult to do that without some form of a very largely agreed upon system of, no other term, but authority for that. So yeah, that is this episode's Let Me Ask You This. Bilbo Swaggins, thanks for that, buddy. That was great.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every